Hey there, Dr. G again. Coming to give you a final installment of video lectures, I guess, for the course. We're in our last week now, so it's kind of exciting, I'm sure, everything coming together. So I was just going to talk with you for just a couple minutes about the difference between domestic and foreign policy, and do a couple of the pointers of each. Just so everybody's aware, hopefully you're reading in the books and all that. So domestic policy just means that it is the way the government takes care of its people. There's a lot of different ideas about how that should look. How many services should the government be in charge of? How often should it step in? It's up for debate, and a lot of that has to do with the partisanship lines, right? So if you're a more libertarian leaning politician, then you would believe in less government involvement. And so that usually means fewer programs, it means less funding, all that kind of stuff. If you are on the other end of the spectrum, then you want more government, but that's the authoritarian spectrum, so you want the government to control more facets of civilian life. And so our government is somewhere in between, as is usually the case with most governments. They fall somewhere on the spectrum. So our government was relatively small until Franklin Delano Roosevelt really came in and increased the size of government back in the early 20th century. And we've been fairly sizably large as far as domestic policy goes for some time since. We had Social Security, federal student aid, Medicaid, Medicare, K through 12 education, food stamps, just like all these government services that sometimes everybody gets them, sometimes you have to apply for them, but just things that the government provides. Domestic policy would also include other institutions that govern, like police force, fire departments, any sort of hospitals that are government run, all that kind of stuff. So basically, for domestic policies, it's a 4-step process. You have number 1, an agenda needs to be set. What are we trying to accomplish? Number 2, I need to enact a policy. So let's say that our agenda is to get all children to school safely. So then we enact a policy of school busing. And then step 3, we have implementation, so we actually do it. We create all these buses, we ship the buses out. The buses transport the kids to and from school. And then step 4, we evaluate. Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is what we hope to happen with our agenda happening? If so, great. If not, we need to change something. Just not too much as far as domestic policy goes that really needs to be covered. It's a contentious topic for sure, more so than some of our others like structures of government and whatnot. Social welfare programs are big. Lots of contention in government around those. They are, quote, the safety net for citizens. Things like HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development, food stamps, unemployment, temporary assistance for needy families, WIC, social services, all of those programs that go through lots of evaluation as to whether or not they are, quote unquote, worth the money, worth the programs. Do they enable people, or do they hinder them? So these are the questions that get asked a lot. Basically, as in everything else, money for these programs and other services like education and police and whatnot come from taxes. Basically, sorry, I blanked on a word here. On the socialist capitalist spectrum, the more money you pay into government and the more you allow government to do for you, the more socialist you are. The more money you keep for yourself and are determined by private entities, corporations and all that, the more capitalistic you are. So that was one of our discussion questions this week, but just so everybody's familiar. Okay, foreign policy. Foreign policy is a whole nother matter. Foreign policy is the way that the United States government handles itself abroad with other countries and with international entities, international governmental organizations. So foreign policy, according to your book, has 4 main facets. To protect the United States, to secure resources for its citizens, to have a balance of power on the global order and to forward human rights and democracy around the world. Now, I have a good amount of research in this area, and I have to say that 3 of those 4 definitely I can see. The 4th one, the United States has not always really done a great job of championing. So that's just from an assessment of these were your 4 goals. How well did you accomplish them? Number 1, yes, the United States has done a wonderful job of protecting itself. The United States has basically never been invaded. There was the attack on Pearl Harbor in World War II, but for the most part, the United States has managed to avoid major conflicts abroad, except for the ones it opted to enter into. We've never really fought a war on our soil since the Civil War. So, number 2, resources. The procurement of resources is a big deal for the United States. We really don't have that many resources that citizens covet. So we have to go out and find them other places. Precious metals, oil, coffee, exotic fruits and vegetables. All of those things have to be procured from other countries, which requires trade negotiations and relations with those countries. Number 3, balance of power. The United States has definitely done its part to maintain a balance of power across the globe. It has been and continues to be a world dominator, a hegemon, so to speak. And in many different ways, whether that be military might or economic power or soft power through trade negotiations and whatnot. But the United States has always been and continues to be a major actor in balance of power moves. And then finally, the establishment of human rights and democracy across the world. That's the one that the United States does not have a very good track record with. We have not done a very good job of fostering democracy in other countries. There have been a couple times that we've invaded countries or been part of an invasion force that was tasked with bringing democracy to that country. So far, we have not had any successful democratic countries created post an American war with the country or neighboring countries. As far as human rights go, the United States was pivotal in creating several branches of human rights in the United Nations, ICC, ICJ, for example, but the United States has since bowed out of those organizations and chosen to not be a part of them. So, as far as human rights go, the United States is actually behind compared to other Western countries. So the United Nations is sort of the major international unit, institution out there, of which the United States is a member of the Security Council, which include the 5 permanent members, which have veto power. So the United States continues to be a major player at the United Nations. The United States has had a history of realism, majorly defensive realism, as its international relations strategy. And I won't get into all the different types of international relations theories, because that's a whole different class. But what you need to know about defensive realism is that it was kind of founded by a man named Kenneth Waltz. And Waltz's notion of defensive realism was that a country will always act in what it believes to be its own best interests. It will procure itself enough power and resources to not be threatened by other countries, and it will continue to act regardless of what kind of government it has domestically. It will continue to act on the foreign battlefield, basically, for lack of a better word, in a way that ensures its own protection, its own life, its own procurement of resources, and all that sort of stuff. So that has always, well, maybe not always, but has for a long time been the United States' stance on foreign relations. Other than that, just know that the United States has the biggest military in the world. It is bigger than the top 10 countries, the next number 2 through 11 combined. Half of our revenue, half of our bill from Congress goes to the military or some sort of military-related budget for numerous different reasons. But it does enable us to have a lot of influence on the global international and foreign table. Furthermore, the United States currency, the US dollar, continues to be one of, if not the most powerful money in the world. The euro and the dollar have been fighting for first place for some time. Recent events in the in the European Union have caused the dollar to once again gain more global prominence than the euro, but only time will tell. So that's foreign and domestic policy for you. Hope this helps. Enjoy the rest of your week and hope you had a great class.